So we're going to give it a few more minutes to see if our other commissioners roll in. Give us 5 more minutes, maybe?
We need 5 more minutes too.
Perfect, perfect.
To see if they thought it was 6:30 or 7.
I know.
Well, now I'm trained to look at the time and see which one it is.
Yeah. Well, I got caught twice when we switched from 7:30 to 7. I was just, running on autopilot.
What's that? What do you mean? Well, he was going to go to Dropbox, but I think you can also pull it from the website too.
I believe so. Check with Ann if she's heard anything. That's a question.
I think Doug is away, that's right.
That's right, polar bears.
Doug is visiting the polar bears.
Legitimately visiting polar bears?
Yes,
Just go to
quite literally.
Now I have a bunch of questions to ask.
And not at the zoo.
Sounds like a good conversation. And do we know that Phil is coming? It's only a few minutes past, so just
Yeah. As soon as they're ready, we can probably get started. We have 3.
I see.
Oh, okay. But we do need Phil.
So
Okay.
if Phil has mistaken the time, would we offer to hold off to 7 and move forward with the second item?
Don't show up right away, because it's not going to happen right away.
Oh, if he had.
And number 2 or number 3? Yeah, well, that's number 3. Do we want to call Phil? Oh, okay, great.
Close the file on the computer.
Yeah, can you pull that? No, I think you did. I don't know if you got. I think you covered on some. But not on the. Yeah, you may need your fob again. Normally I just drag and drop right onto the desktop. But so I'd close that out. Let's try John's here.
John, which one is yours?
You want all three? Do you want to drag the folders, or is there a particular?
Doing our annual pumpkin carving party at our office, but I had to leave. I got my pumpkin done. Now here I sit.
Is this something that goes into the evening? Sing the whole evening?
It'll probably go till 7:30, 7 or 7:30, but you know, it'll be 6:15. Haul tail to get over here. It's not as much fun. I won't call this no fun. I plan to have fun.
A little bit of fun tonight.
For me, anyways. Maybe not for anyone else.
Tell me, try to.
Took a minute to find the cell phone.
We're still waiting for one of our other commissioners to come to show up to the meeting. We need a quorum in order to discuss the first item, and Commissioner Arkin will be recusing himself. So we're waiting for a third commissioner who is eligible to discuss this. Give us a few more minutes.
Phil's homesick.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to quick consult my Brown Act to see whether the two of you can volunteer presentation.
It's just for comment, though.
Right. You're not, certainly not voting on it, and I want to see if you can at least hear the presentation.
Were we supposed to approve tonight?
No.
No, there's
Oh,
no
okay.
voting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you definitely could, just the two of you could vote on it. But
Okay.
let me just consult the Brown Act,
Yeah.
reference that with them to see what the presentation is.
Okay.
Sorry,
Wait to
give us
make
another
an
minute or two.
announcement until we get back. have to recuse yourself from any items on the agenda tonight?
Not as far as I know, yeah.
So my house is either 495 or 512.
You can check with the city attorney. If you want to just say something different.
So quick update. At this time, we only have 3 commissioners. Jeff is going to check the Brown Act to see if the 2 commissioners available are eligible to hear and provide comment. For anything that requires voting, we need 3 commissioners. So he's just going to seek a little bit more information to make sure that we're not violating any acts. So give us a few more minutes.
Okay. Commissioners, thank you for your patience. I was able to consult with the city attorney a few moments ago regarding the University Village item. Commissioner Arkin needs to recuse himself if he were to address the issue tonight. The commission needs to have a quorum present to hear an agenda item. But what the city attorney offered as an alternative was that the commission, the three of you, can form a subcommittee. And the subcommittee can meet, the two remaining commissioners meet as a subcommittee, take in public comment. We wouldn't recommend real substantive direction because the full committee, the full commission isn't here, but you can hear that information. The members of the public can present testimony, the applicants can present information and so forth. And it would be solely as a subcommittee. And then at the end of that presentation discussion, the full commission then would convene, the three of you would convene and continue with the rest of your business this evening.
Would we need to vote on creating the subcommittee?
You would vote to kind of as a procedural step, establish a subcommittee to hear the presentations that have been planned for this evening.
Okay.
Well, before we do anything, we should call our meeting to order.
Correct.
Let's do that. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Arkin,
Here.
Commissioner Pilch,
Here.
Commissioner Eisenman.
Here. So this is the opportunity for the public to come forward and address the commission on any items not already on the agenda. Anyone interested in coming forward Okay, seeing none, let's move on to there is no items on the consent calendar, and the first item up for discussion is 6A.
So I will move that we form a subcommittee for the purpose of discussion of item 6A on tonight's agenda, and the subcommittee being 3 commissioners present right now.
With the subcommittee, the 3 of us, Commissioner Arkin could sit on the subcommittee, or would it?
No, Commissioner Arkin should not sit on the
Oh,
subcommittee.
pardon.
He can vote to
I
establish
can-
the subcommittee and then leave the room
I
when
see.
when the discussion begins.
So he
Okay,
can
well,
vote on the subcommittee.
Yes,
On the
he can second my motion. Would you like to second my motion?
I would.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We have now formed a subcommittee. Commissioner Pilch and I will continue to hear testimony and the presentation on this item while Commissioner Arkin recuses himself.
And thank you for your patience, and this is being organized in the spirit of giving the people who are here this evening the opportunity to hear the presentation and for the subcommittee to get that information.
And thanks for getting the creative answer.
Yes, and I'd like everyone to know that this is being televised and it is possible to go back and review and watch, so the commissioners who are not here will have the chance to see and hear the comments. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, this evening we would like to give you an update on the UC Village project. You've had many meetings about this, you know overall the scope of the project, but it's just to refresh the memory of everyone, it's a combination of a grocery store anchored retail project on the north west corner of Monroe and San Pablo, and a senior housing, assisted living and independent living senior housing project of 175 units on the southwest corner of San Pablo and Monroe. We are going through the process of a tentative map to create the parcels associated with the development project, as well as design review for the architecture of the buildings. You've received a number of presentations. Most recently, there was a focus on the architecture. This evening, I'd like to give you a focus on the circulation system, and particularly some progress that we've made on the San Pablo Avenue right-of-way, which has been an area of particular interest and technical challenge for the design team and for the city. So I'd like to give you a presentation on this, and then the design teams are here as well. They've made some progress on some things that I think they want to give you an update on some of the comments that have been received at previous meetings. I realize this graphic is completely unreadable, but I just wanted to show it because I'm going to zoom in later on and just kind of pick a few different spots on the graphic, but I wanted to show you overall what we're talking about. This is San Pablo Avenue. North is to the left. Over here, this would be the retail portion of the project. This is Monroe Street. And so we'll zoom in on this Monroe-San Pablo intersection. This is the senior housing portion of the project. This is Dartmouth coming in from the east. And then finally, this is the Cordonices Creek and the city limit over here going into Berkeley. The idea that we're trying to accomplish with this right-of-way is to serve the needs of the project as well as to serve the needs of the community in San Pablo Avenue, trying to accommodate pedestrians, bicyclists, transit, the 25,000 cars a day or so that go through, and make it safe and comfortable for all different kinds of modes of traffic. The project has evolved quite a bit over the years. It has been years, but in the last few months in particular, some early versions of this project, the grocery store was set back away from the street, and there was another driveway. The design teams have modified the project in response to public comments and commission comments. The senior housing project over here, there's been some refinement to the design and the access to that project so that, again, responding to some of the concerns about creating both a good project and safe access and circulation. The other thing that we're trying to do that's not really a focus of tonight's presentation, but it's in the back of our minds, is on the other side of the street, the east side of the street, leaving enough room in the right-of-way so for future projects we can put in if so desired, a Class 2, an on-street bikeway, and without losing the on-street parking on that side. So we're trying to squeeze a lot of things into a relatively narrow right-of-way. And before I leave this slide, one more thing to touch on. Currently, there are 2 bus stops southbound San Pablo. Sorry, I keep on losing my mouse. Oh, there it is. One close to the San Pablo Marin intersection, and another one down in this area towards Cordonices Creek. And what it looks like it's going to work best is consolidating those 2 stops into one in this area near the grocery store. We'll go into more details on that in a second. Well, we'll start there. So the issue for the bus stop is the buses need to be able to pull out of the lane of traffic. And so this is what we would propose in working with, in some discussions with Caltrans, putting a bus stop a little bit north of the grocery store. We haven't consulted formally with AC Transit on this, but in our past consultations, they like the idea of being as close as possible to the grocery store. They feel like their transit users really don't want to have to walk a long ways with their groceries to get back on the bus. The other thing that's not shown on this plan, but that's a potential issue or area of discussion, is whether to add another pedestrian crossing in the, again, I'm sorry, I don't know why the mouse disappears for a second or two. But basically on the left side of the screen, because as you know, on San Pablo Avenue, there aren't a lot of good pedestrian crossings. And one alternative would be to put it kind of mid-block between Monroe and San Pablo. Excuse me, Monroe and Marin. This is a cross-section illustration of the basic the combination of a bike path, 2-way bike path, and a sidewalk. And as you look at this, kind of imagine walking southbound San Pablo, say from Marin towards the grocery store. This is what you have: an 8-foot bike path, a 6-foot sidewalk, a planting area that is a buffer next to the street, and then the street itself over here on the left. What's a little different about the experience that a pedestrian or bicyclist would have is there isn't going to be a parking strip here, so that vehicles will be traveling relatively close to the curb. And then the planting area here, we can get into this more later on, but one of the challenges with this configuration, trying to fit all these different modes of travel in, is this planting area will not accommodate a full-size tree. It's too close to the travel lane, and it also presents a hazard to bicyclists who, if they kind of weave off the bike path a little bit, it's a hazard for everybody. So this would have to be a lower level planting that cars or bicyclists wouldn't crash into. These are all not ideal widths. Everything would be nice if all this could be a lot wider, but it's functional, but it's not as wide as we would ideally like, and it's basically constrained by the width of the right-of-way. This is the Monroe-San Pablo intersection. There's a lot going on here. At various planning and zoning commission, as well as traffic and safety commission meetings, there's been some discussion about trying to reduce the width of this intersection. So one of the changes that you see on this drawing that is different from previous versions is the turning radius from trucks heading southbound on San Pablo turning into Monroe is a little tighter. And that means a truck making that right turn is going to have to maneuver a little bit more carefully and might cross a little bit into the traffic that's trying to get out. It's not great for the truck drivers, but it's good for the pedestrians who have less street to have to cross. The other thing that's proposed as part of this is what's called a speed table. It's basically keeping the level of the bikeway elevated about 3 inches above the level of the road. And it basically slows down the motorist who might be coming in and out and makes them aware that there's something crossing. And the idea here is to get people to slow down, to look both ways, to look for the bicyclists and pedestrians. For the bicyclist and the pedestrian, we'll be putting recommending some surface treatment, something to kind of both visually and just in terms of the feel of the pathway, alert them that there is an intersection coming up and getting them to slow down. This intersection is really, frankly, one of the biggest safety challenges with all this because it's going to be a busy intersection. It's the grocery store, the senior housing, plus the 960 units or so of student housing behind it. There's going to be a lot going on. So we want to try to get everybody to slow down. I mentioned the pedestrian crossing up the street, and the other alternative would be to have a pedestrian crossing here. Right now, the intersection, you can see kind of overlay in this graphic, the existing layout of the intersection. There's one pedestrian crossing on the south side of the intersection. If we put another one here, there's still a little bit of risk to the pedestrian because the way the intersection currently operates, at least, vehicles will be making a left turn onto San Pablo, and the pedestrians would be crossing presumably at the same time. If we have a pedestrian-only phase, then the traffic implications on San Pablo Avenue are more significant, and the vehicle delays are more significant, which is an issue for Caltrans. So it's a little bit of a trade-off there that we're still fine-tuning. This shows that speed table. It's a little bit, I think it's a little bit exaggerated here. You're basically talking about something that's 3 or 4 inches higher than what it would normally be. Next is the area in front of the senior housing project. There is been discussed since really the conception of this project quite a while ago, a pedestrian-activated crossing that will stop traffic for pedestrians and bicyclists at Dartmouth. And this is key to making access to this project walkable or bikeable for people living on the east side of San Pablo Avenue. The other thing that has evolved with the design is the operation, kind of the flow of the driveways in and out of the senior housing. As it's shown here, a person going to the senior housing in the main entrance would come southbound on San Pablo. There'd be a right turn into the driveway. They could either go straight into the parking lot or go into a driveway pickup area here. And then to exit the driveway, they would come back out and turn right only. There are still some crossings here, and whenever whenever there's a pedestrian, two-way pedestrian bicycle crossing in the driveway, that's where there are potential hazards. So we need to, again, work on making sure that both the pedestrian, bicyclists, and the motorists are paying attention to each other. The other way out, by the way, for people who are looking to go northbound on San Pablo, they can go through the parking structure, come out on 10th, come up Monroe by the grocery store, and go out the intersection as most people coming in and out of the village will be doing. The final thing that needs a little bit of refinement is getting from this location, from the pedestrian activated signal to Cordonices Creek, both again for pedestrians and bicyclists, and exactly how the pedestrians and bicyclists make that maneuver safely just needs a little bit of refinement. There's a public art element here, proposed to be here, and so again, kind of making all that fit and function nicely is a little bit more work, but I think we can figure that out. And again, this shows the driveway where I'm trying to have a speed hump in the driveway area as well to slow down the motorist from kind of making a quick turn into the driveway or the parking structure. This shows the path closer to Cordonices Creek, where the pedestrian and bicyclists would be proposed to share a mixed-use path. Again, this is the area where we think we might need to refine the movements so people aren't crashing into each other along here. So with that, I will perhaps pause and take any questions. I think the development teams may want to make a presentation to you as well.
Just for clarity in terms of moving forward, are we able to, we can ask questions, or
Sure.
the community would ask questions, and then are we able to comment?
I think you can, as a subcommittee, I think you just have to preference your comments that you're just acting as a subcommittee, and the other commissioners, the full commission, may have more or different comments. You can't represent the entire commission.
And then would we ask this presentation to happen again at another time? What?
We could do that, or as you mentioned, if members of the commission, other members of the commission want to watch it and then ask questions at a future meeting, we can arrange that.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Are there questions for staff?
Yeah, so I have a few. So you've spoken with Caltrans during this period between the last meeting and now, but you've not had discussions with AC Transit about the bus stop?
That's correct.
Okay. And how would you characterize the discussions with Caltrans? Are they complete? Are they ongoing? Are they midway?
They're ongoing, I would say. I think we're further than midway, but I wouldn't say it's complete. Caltrans is a big organization, and there are layers to their review, and I don't think it's gotten all the way through their formal review process.
Okay, and I may have missed it, but the signal at Dartmouth, is it called out exactly what sort of signal that is?
It would be sometimes referred to as a hawk. It's a pedestrian-activated light that would stop traffic. It would be
Pedestrian or bicycle, I assume?
or bicycle activated. Yeah.
Okay. And finally, did you consider the bus stop, moving the bus stop to the far southern end of the project next to Cornices Creek?
We did, and one of the things I'm sorry I didn't mention this, but one of the other things that we're trying to fit in is a red zone for the fire department. When they respond to medical emergencies, which they will to the senior housing project, they need a place to park their fire engine. They send a fire engine and an ambulance to medical calls. The ambulance can pull into the driveway, but the fire engine's not going to want to do that. So we're going to create a red zone right here for the fire engine to park. And this also will, in this red zone, it also will be a place where bicyclists will be able to transition onto San Pablo southbound into Berkeley, where the bicyclists will have to travel in the travel lane. So we felt like reserving this red zone for the fire engine and for that transition down here, move the stop towards the grocery store, where hopefully it will be more convenient for the shopper. Given the average age of residents in the senior housing is 85, we're not expecting a lot of the residents of the senior housing project to use the bus. Many of the employees of the senior housing might, but they would presumably be comfortable walking a few hundred feet from the north.
Okay, that's it for my questions.
So I'm curious what the thought is about the bicycle track continuing down San Pablo long term. Is that something that we would be interested in looking at, continuing it northbound? So what I'm curious is this it? Is this where we're going to stop for now, or do you see that there could be a potential for it to continue? And
Absolutely, it's logical that it continue northbound from the store, the corner of the store, all the way up to Marin here, where it connects with the bikeway that we've just constructed. And that absolutely is a project that we want to, that hasn't been in any of our plans to date. It's not in the active transportation plan, but now that as we're building this stuff out, it's obviously a link that needs to be a high priority.
so the way it's designed now is probably going to set design down there. So if we eliminate the parking along this side of the street, we would expect that to continue. And One of the questions I had, if you could pull up the cross-section of where it shows the sidewalk, yes. So I'm not an engineer, but I'm curious about the 3.5-foot planting strip and the separation of the 8-foot bicycle path. So if the child was biking and they had an accident, you know, it feels like it's really close to the street with traffic moving, and I'm just curious what dialogue happened around that, if it'd be better to shrink the sidewalk to 5 feet and move the bicycle path close, you know, what
Yeah.
could you?
This cross-section requires some special exceptions for Caltrans. Caltrans would normally like to see, I believe, a 5-foot, and the engineers here can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they would normally like to see a 5-foot planting area to give a little bit more room for just that kind of thing. And they'd also normally like to see a shoulder between the bike path and the sidewalk so that there's a little bit more room. Those are some of the exceptions that Caltrans will need to approve. The Traffic and Safety Commission looked at this last week, and one of the commissioners wondered whether perhaps a very low railing of some sort might be appropriate. So if someone kind of lost balance, rather than tumble into the roadway or close to the roadway, they would, it'd have to be really carefully engineered not to create a different kind of hazard, but something like that might be appropriate.
I was curious about that too, or if there had been, a bollard system seems almost not enough because there'd just be so many of them, but.
Yeah, it would have to be a continuous
have to be
railing that you could
attractive
kind of
and-
just,
So I guess balancing the width of the sidewalk and the needs of the sidewalk for the safety of the bicycle path.
yeah. 6 feet is really the minimum for 2 people walking side by side. And, in an urban area with an active sidewalk, 10 or 12 feet is really what you want. That means 2 people can walk side by side and someone else can walk by going the other direction, and you're not kind of maneuvering around each other. The minimum code requirement is 4 feet, and that basically gives one person in a wheelchair enough room to roll down there. But as a practical matter, 6 would be the absolute minimum that we could recommend. And
Is the 2.5-foot curb and gutter biting into our existing curb, or is that about the location of where we have it now?
no, right now there's a parking lane here, so the existing curb is someplace in the middle of what would be the bike path. Right now, there's a sidewalk of probably 6, maybe 8 feet, I don't know, and then the curb, and then a 8-foot wide parallel parking.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was also about the bus stop. That was the first thing that caught my attention, with that we don't have a bus stop adjacent to the senior care facility, and I think that might raise some questions in the community. And is this something that we can try, make it a trial period? We put the bus stop there, we try it for a few years. If it doesn't work, could there be a backup plan for where a bus stop could fit? And maybe that is in Berkeley, maybe that's past the fire zone in Berkeley.
It's not terribly difficult for us to work with AC Transit to change a bus stop, particularly if the location that it's at that time is not functioning very well. They'll be motivated. But we can't do anything about the city of Berkeley. That would be completely their call. And I'm not sure about driveways. I'd have to look at Google Earth to see what in the way of driveways are further down the street. They don't like to have their bus stops in front of driveways. So we would probably want to at least try to find a spot within our jurisdiction if we could.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a follow-up. With regards to the 3.5-foot wide planting strip, you mentioned that it would not hold a full-size tree, but might it hold a smaller tree? Or do we know for sure what sort of planting, what would be the maximum size planting there?
There are two different issues. One is the the tree, if there's a tree here, the branches would be, and it branches out more than about 4 or 5 feet, the branches will be broken off by trucks and buses passing by. Because there's no, the vehicles are traveling close to the curb. And then the second issue is the hazard, as we were talking about with, a bicyclist or a vehicle kind of veering off their lane or pathway, as might be. It's the trunk of the tree is a hazard.
Right. And it's funny that I can't remember this, but isn't the bus zone curb painted red?
Yeah.
Could a bus stop serve as the same location as the red zone that a fire engine would pull into?
They would prefer not to, because the fire engine's there for a while. And there are a lot of buses. The frequency of bus service on San Pablo is pretty high, and the fire engine will be there for 20 minutes or so, usually on a medical call. So it would be a lot better, and we don't want to have a fire engine or a bus kind of constantly blocking traffic. And we do expect, the reality of a senior housing complex is there are a lot of medical calls. So it would be fairly routine for the traffic to be blocked. It'd be better if we could find a red zone for it.
Okay, thanks.
So if we can't have a tree, maybe we have a design element that's a railing with a vine. Like we use this potential railing system as something to attach planting to. Becomes an opportunity. Great. So any further questions? I'll tell you what, let's open up to the public and...
Would the developer, I don't know if the developer wanted to make a presentation?
Yes. Would the developer like to come forward and answer any questions, ask any questions?
Good evening, staff and the two commissioners that are here this evening. Steve Cutter with ALBANY. We are actually not going to present tonight. We'll wait till November. We're pretty frustrated. We put a lot of work into this evening, and it's unfortunate, but we'll see you next month.
Thank you. And we apologize.
I'm Sherry Van Dorn, representing Belmont Village. We would like to make a presentation.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me just get mine up here real quick. So good evening. My name is Sherry Van Dorn. I'm with Van Dorn Abed Landscape Architects, and I really appreciate the time tonight to present you the landscape design and circulation plan for the senior living portion of the project. So starting with the site plan, just to get everybody oriented to the project. I'm not getting a mouse either. Hang on a sec. Sorry. Maybe that'll help. So starting along San Pablo frontage, we have our, as was mentioned already by Jeff, the right turn in. We come into the drop-off area. Oh, sorry. I'm not used to this laptop. We have our drop-off area, which will be scored and colored concrete. And then as we come out of the project with the right turn out, we have our public art component in this location. And we come back around down to the Cornices Trail. Oh, I'm already off of that slide. I'm sorry. I totally. Let's see. Okay, sorry. So we're coming down to the Cornices Creek Trail interface. We have an at-grade courtyard in our project. And then as we come further down, the trail then comes over along the 10th Street frontage. Looking at San Pablo towards the project, we have the planter strip along the street, and we're still sowing trees in there right now, the 3.5-foot strip. And the reason we are is because we think that they're a really important presence along the San Pablo Avenue frontage. And as Jeff suggested, there may be a way to mitigate the hazards involved. One of the things we would be doing is providing a linear root barrier, which would at least protect the sidewalk and the curb. And then perhaps a low rail could be installed to prevent between the bike path and the actual trees so that we could prevent someone, they would just bounce off the rail. We could also install trees large enough that we could prune them up. I mean, it's very common for a street tree to be on the street. So if trucks don't tear down branches and things like that, the pedestrians will be fully clear of them. So we'd still like to see the trees on the project if possible. You can see behind the bike path, we have a raised planter. And then as you go further north on the project, we have some at-grade planting. So along the project frontage, when we started to do the detailed design work, the first thing we did is we reached out to the landscape architect for the commercial part of the project to make sure that we could provide sort of a unified frontage along San Pablo. And so even though our plans are not exactly the same, we're providing some detail elements that move through both projects so we get a nice unified frontage on the street. What we're showing here, I'm sorry Jeff missed that whole part about the street trees. But anyway, we're showing London Plains still along the street frontage. And then below that, we have an understory of about a 2 to 3 foot high clumping grasses. When you move across the bike trail, I don't know why it's doing that, sorry, skipping. Move across towards the building to the raised planter, we have a flowering crepe myrtle. Below that, we have an ornamental asparagus with some low flowering ground cover that will soften the edges of the planter. And then as you move north, we have some cape rush along the building, which continues flowing from the commercial project as well in through to our project. And then we layer down to a low flax and a blue fescue. As we move around the corner on the Cordonices Creek Trail, we'll be using both native and riparian plants for a seamless connection to the creek. We get about halfway down the trail and you'll open up the view into our courtyard that's at grade. Because of the secure nature and needs of our residents, we would be installing a view fence and gates to protect that edge. The gates would only be open for special events, and when they were open, they would be monitored. So there would be very little traffic going between the creek and the courtyard. There's also some emergency exits from the building, 2 of them, and 1 from the courtyard as well. So infrequent use, but yet still a connection to the creek. And in all of those cases, we have a pathway leading from those gates or doors to the trail. So there's an opportunity for somebody to step out, not onto the trail, look both ways, make sure there's no bikes, and then safely access the trail. When you're down on the trail, you'll be looking into our courtyard, and the at-grade portion is at the same level as the creek trail. And there'll be a water feature and a seating area. And if you go up the ramp to the upper level terrace, there'll be dining spilling out from both the restaurant and the bistro. And then there'll be comfortable seating areas and gathering spaces for our residents to look out over the courtyard and over the creek. As you move down to 10th Street, we'll have street trees and landscaping there as well. And in this location, it's the low spot on the site, so we'll be capturing the majority of our stormwater here and treating it in the landscape areas. So all of the plant material that we use here will be suitable for that purpose, as well as to complement the project. We also recognize that there's a lot of activity at the ball fields and the park across the street. So we're proposing some 12-foot wide platforms at the 3 activity spill-out points. There's a place by the bleachers. There's a couple of locations where kids can just spill out, and they'll immediately spill out onto the sidewalk, of course, but we know that that always translates into running through the landscaping. So we're proposing essentially these platforms there to handle that extra activity. And then to the right and left of each of those platforms will be a no-mow fescue, which can handle some foot traffic as well. So we're confident we can really maintain this area well, accommodate the activity, and have a beautiful landscape that will last into the future. There's also some existing trees on site. So our team met with the city's arborist on site to take a look and see what could be kept, if anything. And the arborist's direction to us was to see if we could possibly relocate 3 deodar cedars, and you can see them at the top of the screen. So we contacted Valley Crest Landscape, who is an expert tree moving company, and had them evaluate the trees. And upon their first evaluation, they felt that the risk outweighed the reward to relocate these trees. They're in good to fair condition, and they're somewhat stressed. And when you relocate a tree, you cause it more stress. So you get either the tree that you see now, or it declines further. So the idea here was that we could actually go out and purchase a beautiful specimen tree that's as big and of a better quality than the ones that we were looking at possibly relocating. And you can see that on the bottom. There's a deodar to the left, a redwood, and a sycamore. We're just showing you a variety of large trees that could actually be purchased. and the rate of success would be much greater. So that's what we're proposing as opposed to the relocation. We also have 3 additional outdoor use areas for our residents. They're located on the 2nd floor. The top of the drawing is San Pablo, and the right is the creek frontage, just to get you oriented to where you are. The main courtyard is going to be shared by all of the residents, but it's separated into 2 portions. The bottom half is for our memory care residents. They have a special need to be able to not get lost and wander off. So they have their own courtyard where it spills out from their dining area. They'll have outdoor dining. They'll have a trellis with seating and then a looped walking trail. And then the courtyard space above is for both independent living and assisted living residents. And they have walkways, game tables, gathering spaces, a gazebo with an outdoor area for organized activities, and of course, landscaping and trees. Then we have another courtyard adjacent to our independent living residents with, again, seating areas, game tables, and an overhead trellis. And this courtyard's going to have great views to the East Bay Hills as well. And then finally, we have a courtyard on the terrace outside of the fitness room where activity can spill out from there and become an outdoor activity. Belmont has a Sit and Be Fit program that can happen out here. And you're also overlooking the courtyard, the water feature, and the creek, so it'd be a nice area to hang out. So overall, we're going to be using sustainable design practices, bay-friendly design practices. We'll be using primarily low water use, native and Mediterranean species that are good for the local climate and conditions. We'll be installing a drip irrigation system with smart weather-based controllers for water savings. We'll also be installing an irrigation system that could be future connected to a reclaimed water system if it ever became available. Special equipment involved to do that, so we do that up front. And so overall, we think we're providing a beautiful gateway to Albany, to the San Pablo Avenue frontage, safe and secure outdoor environments for our residents, and a safe and environmentally friendly connection to the creek trail. So our civil engineer, I think, might want to go over a few items for you, and then our team is here to answer questions.
John Lehman with BKF Engineers. So I wanted to respond to a few of the comments that were made about this exhibit that had to do with the bus stop and the shared or the separate bike lanes. We had some comments that were given to us in the Transportation and Safety Commission or Traffic and Safety Commission meeting about the termination, how we deal with the termination of the two-way bike lane. And I think at the south end of the lane, actually, well, maybe I'll just talk. At the south end of the lane, what our thoughts are in front of the senior housing is to have the southbound bikes that are going southbound on San Pablo exit out through the bike driveway that's being placed on the crossing of San Pablo, and then they can continue on down to southbound San Pablo Avenue. At the north end, I think the best solution is to provide some signage right at the intersection of Monroe and San Pablo Avenue to alert the bikers that the two-way bike lane is going to terminate at the end of Sprouts. I think at this point, all we were intending on doing was building the two-way bike lane to the end of Sprouts. So the thought was to, or the comment was to provide some additional signage so that they have the opportunity to cross the San Pablo Avenue crosswalk at the intersection of Monroe and San Pablo in order to continue on to northbound San Pablo. And Commissioner Pilch, you brought up the question about the bus stops. And for the seniors, the reality is that the average age of the residents is going to be 85 years old at this facility. And the intent of BELMONT, what BELMONT provides are private car services. They provide a bus service for their residents to take them shopping or to take them basically anywhere they want to go. So their feelings are that the residents of the senior housing aren't really going to take advantage or need to utilize the public bus stop. As far as the employees for the Belmont Village, their position is that they can easily walk the block north to in front of Sprouts in order to catch the bus. And I also want to remind the subcommittee that there are 2 bus stops that are on the village at the intersection of 10th Street and Monroe for buses as well. So they'll have the opportunity to use those bus stops coming out the back entrance or the back way, which is where they'll enter into the village itself anyway. So there's actually 3 bus stops that they'll be able to take advantage of. As far as the conflicts between the bikes, PEDs, and the 2 driveways entering and exiting the village, we have made concessions and we have agreed to have a right turn only in and a right turn only out. Before we had 2-way right in, right out at the north driveway. So we feel that that really helps with the safety issues for not creating conflicts between the cars and the PEDs at the Dartmouth crossing. So we're now proposing only a right in and a right out. And the other design issue that was brought up was the change in elevation of a driveway as you cross it along San Pablo Avenue. And we've come up with the detail that Jeff showed where we have a very abrupt driveway ramp, and then the actual side or the actual portion of the driveway that's within the sidewalk and the bike lane will be at the same elevation of the bikes, for the bikes, as well as for the driveways. To deal with the crossing at Monroe and San Pablo, where the bikes and the PEDs will cross Monroe Street, again, we've gone to a speed table, which will basically raise the pavement 3 inches and lower the sidewalk 3 inches so that we have a continuous grade across the intersection. And I also wanted to comment on the street tree issue. I think what needs to be realized is that there's going to be other things in that parkway strip. Things being a fire hydrant. We'll be adding a fire hydrant in front of the senior housing. And there'll also be some street lights that will be along the frontage of San Pablo that are there now. They'll have to be incorporated. So there's going to be a lot of things going on in the parkway strip. And I think those will all be visual items that are going to be there that will alert the bicyclists that it's really not an area that they need to go in. I understand, Commissioner Eisenman, your concerns about a child maybe going into the parkway strip, and that's obviously a valid concern. So the pipe rail is an alternative that we could consider. Again, it would have to be something that would have to be approved by Caltrans in their right-of-way. One other thing that I wanted to mention was, as far as the review process, we have made an initial submittal to Caltrans. We've gotten feedback from Caltrans, from which we've developed this latest exhibit. And so it's an ongoing process. We're working with city staff and their consultants in trying to come up with another round of exhibits that we can submit back to Caltrans for further input from them. The reality is that we won't ever get sign-off from Caltrans until we've submitted final design drawings. They won't approve the plans until we give them complete final design. That's just how Caltrans works. So our goal is to get feedback and to get positive feedback, and then move forward with the design based on that feedback. I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover.
May I go ahead with some questions?
Yes, yes.
So as far as the street trees go, question for staff actually, if they know off the top of their head, there is a narrow planting strip on Buchanan now in front of on the other side of the fire station, on the south side of Buchanan, a narrow strip which I believe is planted with some trees. Or am I mixing up my areas?
It might be, but that's not a Caltrans jurisdiction.
Okay, so we do have some precedent for a narrow strip planted with trees. And the other question was, you mentioned 3 bus stops, but those bus stops do not serve the same
Routes.
bus routes. Yeah,
I believe you're right, yes.
Yeah, the one on San Pablo might serve the same route as the ones on Monroe, but there's certainly ones on San Pablo that don't serve Monroe.
You're correct, yes. That's
Okay.
right.
Just to make that clear. And did you consider, and maybe for the landscape architect, did you consider, there's a planting area on San Pablo in front of the project, there's a planting area behind, between the sidewalk and the building, which does not show any trees. Did you consider any trees in that area?
We have trees in the raised planters against the building, the crepe myrtles that I showed. As you go further north, the strip is too small. It's too tight up against the building to have an actual tree.
Okay.
But we do have some behind.
All right. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. So I just have to say thank you both for presenting, and I only...
Thank you from the subcommittee.
Yes, thank you from the subcommittee of Commissioner Pilch and myself for presenting to us. I really appreciate that in the landscape design that you communicated with the commercial aspect of the project, and that, you know, regardless of whether or not you decide to contrast or to complement each other's work, that there's been thought behind it, and I appreciate that. It seemed like there was a good balance of texture and color in the plant selection, and so I also appreciated the thought and care that went into selecting those, and that they seemed like very hardy plants. So thank you. I'm also agreeable to not moving trees that seem like they're going to be unsuccessful, so that makes sense too. So I would agree with that approach, and I would back you up on that. For the civil engineering, I also appreciate that the design of the speed tables and the driveways, and I appreciate that you have been having to go back and forth with Caltrans, and that's a frustrating process, and we appreciate the time that you've put into that. I just had one last comment, and that was cyclists who are exiting the Sprouts, so there's parking on the side, there's bicycle parking on the side of Sprouts. If they are looking to get northbound on San Pablo, they would then head south, go across the Dartmouth Street crossing path, and then head north. Is that correct? Or because the way in which it ends now, there's no means to get to the northbound side of the street?
From Sprouts.
Correct.
Yeah. So that would be one way. They could also share the crossing at Monroe. There isn't a dedicated bike crossing at Monroe across San Pablo Avenue.
Okay.
But that would be a closer connection, would be to cross at the intersection there at Monroe.
I was wondering if it had been considered to extend the bicycle path. There was discussion about an additional pedestrian crossing on the left side of the plan, and I don't have the name of the street in front of me, but north of Monroe, is that a serious consideration? Would the bicycle path be extended northbound and allowed to cross at that pedestrian crossing and then join in with the northbound traffic? Did I misunderstand? So north of the proposed bus stop?
So this is, you're asking if we've considered a crossing in this area north of the store?
I heard earlier that there was consideration for another pedestrian crossing that was on the north side of the plan, and I maybe didn't understand correctly, but where it says existing sidewalk, is that where you were considering is there an additional crosswalk being considered?
Well, I think we would want to, I think that's something for us to talk about and decide. I think initially, at least, it would be right at the terminus of the bikeway and next to the bus stop.
Okay,
But it doesn't have to be. It's just somewhere that's most functional for everybody.
I misunderstood. I heard northbound, and I assumed it was all the way to the left side of the drawing, but you're talking about at where the path meets, where the bicycle path ends, right there. And that would make sense, and then the cyclists could continue and cross and go northbound without having to head southbound first.
Right.
I would be an advocate for that. Okay.
Actually, there's one other comment I wanted to make, because Jeff brought up the idea of a Class 2 bikeway going northbound on San Pablo, and we did do a cross-sectional analysis of San Pablo Avenue and the existing right-of-way, and held our proposed changes on the west side and looked at lane realignments, lane widths. And we do feel that the existing lane widths and the section between the two curbs, we would allow for a 5-foot striped bike lane on the northbound direction. So that we believe that the section that we proposed, you could still accommodate a 5-foot next to the parking aisle on the west side. So it would be able to fit in.
That's good news. Thank you.
Are you done with your
I'm
questions?
done with my comments
Okay,
and
I
questions.
have one more question, actually. So I'm looking at in front of the senior housing development, where the cycle track ends, right at Dartmouth, the crossing of Dartmouth, and so what's displayed there on the right towards the bottom is the path, the Cornices Creek path, and so can you tell me again more about the motivation, or what the idea is behind ending the striped path right there at the crossing, rather than continuing it all the way to the Cornices Creek path?
Yeah, we just see a lot of things going on in that area. We have a shared path along Cornices Creek. And so our thought was to rather than to separate them right when they leave the Cornices path right onto San Pablo Avenue, have it as a shared condition as they approach the Dartmouth crossing and cross over. So it seemed to us that you would have basically shared bikes and peds crossing San Pablo Avenue across the Dartmouth crossing. And if they wanted to continue on Cornices, they would also be a shared pathway. Just not to add another complexity of trying to separate all of the different users of the paths, we continued for the short distance from Cornices to the crossing, and then started the bike lane at the intersection.
So as it's drawn, it seems like the width of that shared path is narrower than the combination of the cycle track and the sidewalk, as I eyeball it. Is that correct? Do you know? Or was I clear in what
Yeah.
I'm...
So we have a separated bike path, two-way, which is 8 feet, and we have a sidewalk that's 6 feet.
Right.
So what you're saying is it looks like it's narrower than 14 feet.
Yeah,
in that
it would
area.
appear to be so, and I'm just asking if that's correct. Not saying that that's good or bad, just asking for clarification.
I don't know that we've got the actual defined dimension there.
Okay.
Again, we've got the hawk signal to go in, and we've got the ramps for the crossings to put in. I think those are 6 feet. So I think they're going to cut 2 feet into the 14 feet. So it's probably closer to 12 feet
Okay.
as a shared path, which
Yeah.
I believe is what we're putting in along Cordonesis.
Okay. Okay. That's it for questions.
Okay, let's open it up to the public for comment. Is there anyone who would be interested in addressing the commission on
I
this item?
have one speaker card.
Okay.
So
We have speaker cards at the back of the room. If anyone is interested in speaking, please fill out a comment card and bring it up to Anne.
there
Who's
is
our
a
first speaker?
there is a 3-minute time limit for your comments. So our first speaker is Preston Jordan.
Thank you, Commission and staff, for continuing the work, and to the engineers on the project. Just keeps getting better. It looks like the bus stop issue is moving towards resolution, which was Albany Strollers and Rollers, which I'm speaking for, may concern in terms of the conflict between bus users and cyclists in the previous location. So thank you for that. And the speed table, it's really coming along. Really appreciate that. I do have, well, the image is gone, but I do have some confusion about the south end of the project and the connection to the Cordonesis Creek Trail. The transportation plat shows the Cordonesis path further south than the architectural rendering. And the architectural rendering shows a kind of a softer connection, rounded connection, whereas the transportation plat shows real hard right angle turn. So we would certainly prefer the more rounded connection. Also, ending the cycle track at the ramp and having a multi-use south of that, I don't know what the legal considerations are for having a multi-use path that's essentially on a sidewalk. I mean, cyclists are not, well, adult cyclists in Albany aren't allowed to ride on the sidewalk, and that's kind of what that's starting to look like there. So, again, we would like some clarification for that. One of our members also brought up a concern about the public art that's right at the corner between the Cordonesis Creek path and what will be a multi-use or cycle track along San Pablo. And as you say, there's a lot going on there, and depending on what that public art is, it could block visibility of people coming out of the path, going around the turn, looking at the driveway. It could block driver's view of people coming out of the path, and so that might not really actually be the best spot for the public art. It might be better if it was on the other side of the path to the south somehow, to really keep those sight lines as open as possible. And also, I appreciate the landscape architect's comment on the relationship between the building and the path and the doorways, and that there's a step-out space before you get on the path, because that was something we noticed in the last rendering. And then finally, and the Oppadon is gone, so they won't hear this comment, but hopefully staff can pass it along. They kindly moved the long-term bike parking from the side of Sprouts down to the Monroe intersection, which the desire there was to move it closer to the bus stop. Well, now the bus stop is moved, so the lockers need to chase the bus stop. And one possibility is actually to put those lockers at the northeast corner of Sprouts. So it'd be next to the bus stop, and they'd also be in a location where I believe it might be more convenient for employees to use them, which are, likely long-term users. I know there's a door at the back of Sprouts right there. I don't know if that's an employee entrance or not, but that might also help activate that area. So that's another thought. And, I don't know what my time is, but I think that's all I have. Thanks so much. Really appreciate all the hard work on everybody's part trying to get this done. Oh, one other thought. On the 5-foot bike lane northbound, if there's an extra 5 feet, some consideration should be given to making what's going on the west side work better, because a bike lane northbound on San Pablo, it's only going to go from Dartmouth to Marin. the way the Complete Streets Plan is currently structured. So it's not really providing a whole lot, and there's cost benefit. Is that providing more benefit than those 5 feet would provide if you added it to this section on the west side, so you could have a wider parkway, you could have better trees, you could have a more generous sidewalk, if there is that space. I would strongly consider that. Also, a 5-foot bike lane, if it's along a 7-foot parking strip, and I don't know if a 7 or 8 feet is what's in mind, but if it's squeezed in 7 feet, that's a door zone bike lane, and we would oppose that. So the outer stripe would have to be 13 feet from the curb in order for Albany strollers and rollers to support it. That's what we view as the minimum for a safe cycling facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next 2 speakers are Chris Kent and Ed Fields.
Thank you. I want to really support Susan on the street tree idea. I don't want to give up on those either. I think there's ways to put them in. It was mentioned that it was Caltrans that might be the ones fighting that, but if I know Caltrans code, I think you have 18 inches from edge of curb before you have a fixed structure, which would be the street light or a tree. And we have that from the curb to the bike lane. We have 4 feet. We have 3.5 planting. We have 6-foot curbs. We have 4 feet. So we can get a tree in there. And since we already have those fixed objects, those would be just as much of an obstacle to cyclists as the trees would. And if you're coming north, if you're cycling north on that track and you go off, you're going to go head on into a bus. I'd rather hit a tree than head on to a bus. So those obstacles might actually soften your blow. But the better idea was Susan's idea with the railing. So if we put a railing up there to protect you from hitting the trees, maybe it's a win-win all the way around. It's still tight, and even if we did put a tree in a 3.5 foot, a large tree like a sycamore in a 3.5 foot zone, I'm not sure how healthy it will be, whether it'll get strong enough and big enough to get those branches up. So perhaps there's some sort of engineering method where you can structure it. I know they have these systems where you can put them under the sidewalk so the roots can grow down below and won't heave the sidewalk, and look at those sorts of systems. That's basically all I have to say. I think the landscape plan presented was quite nice, but I really want to support the trees.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ed Fields, Albany resident. I think I'm now clear on the bus. It's been very confusing to me. So the 52 bus exiting UC Village down Monroe, turning right onto San Pablo, heading to the university, will not have a stop except back west of 10th Street, I guess. That was one of the concerns, or one of the things I wanted to clarify. And then I guess the question about the buses going down San Pablo, primarily the 72, would only stop at the most northerly bus. Well, there would only be the one bus stop, which would be north of the Sprouts. And then just a couple of other comments, because it's hard to sit here and not want to say something. We're fighting over a foot or two. These projects extend back 300, 350 feet, and they can't come up with a foot or two to add to the right-of-way in the way of some kind of public easement, open space, parkland dedication. I mean, there's all these things that they have to fulfill, and and we're worrying about kids running into traffic, off a bike lane where there's not a big enough barrier or buffer, I should say. So there's that. Another issue is the question of UC's maintenance of the trees over the last years. If there's been any, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of a question I just sort of keep posing. Does that explain the condition that the trees are in? And the last thing, by the way, oh, there it is. I was going to say we can't see that. So I don't know. I'm assuming the commissioners who are here and hopefully the development team has seen El Cerrito Natural Grocery just down the street on San Pablo Avenue. So there's an example of a natural foods grocery store. It's set out on the street with big windows. You walk down the street, you look in at the all organic produce, right? They've taken over the paint store next door. It's going to be a prepared foods part of the store with, again, big picture windows. It isn't open yet. It's due to open in a month or so. And that business, small business, has got 140 kilowatts of PV. You guys ought to be ashamed.
Thank you. Who's next?
The next two speakers are Robert Lieber and Robert Del Rosario.
How many speaker cards do we have?
That's it
And that's
for
it.
this item.
Commissioners. My name is Robert Lieber, an Albany citizen. First of all, I'd like to say that I think that it's a Brown Act violation for a member who has to recuse himself to vote on actually creating a subcommittee that talks on an issue. I just want to get that into the record. I have 4 things, mainly, that I've said before, is that as you approach this project, that you continue to consider the creek, Cordnesis Creek, the setbacks, the restoration and preservation of that space. That the pedestrian bikes and bike paths do a complete streets plan, which you're working on. That they meet or exceed all of the open space requirements of the project. And that we protect and implement the public arts requirements without watering them down. I would echo Ed's statement that there's a lot of space there, and that setting it back another foot or 2 wouldn't substantially change their project and would substantially make for a complete streets there, much easier with trees and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Robert Del Rosario, Director of Service Development for AC Transit. I'm glad I came and took a look at the presentation today. Where this project was last left with AC Transit and the university in the previous iteration, there was going to be a separate study between AC Transit, strollers and rollers, and I believe that the developer to look at what would be the best solutions to have both a cycle track and an AC Transit bus stop at the intersection of Monroe and San Pablo. And I guess what I'm seeing now is that the actual bus stop has been relocated away. So it seems like that's the solution, was to move the bus stops further away from Monroe and San Pablo. And essentially also moving our passengers away from where probably the primary activity will be, and the best proximity of a bus stop to the development would be not only the Sprouts development, but also the senior development. So we hope that we can continue the conversations with the university or with the city and strollers and rollers to really come up with a solution that works for all modes of transportation. We do like the bus stops at Monroe. Far side stops are always preferable for AC Transit. They're safer, and they also get the buses through much quicker. So we hope that we can review the bus stops in location along San Pablo. We also want to look at signal timing along San Pablo. We know that there's already current congestion at Marin and Buchanan. We only assume that this will create additional congestion along San Pablo Avenue. We think that if we can look at some timing between Monroe, Marin, Buchanan, and Solano, actually, it'll get the traffic flowing a lot better, and also get AT Transit buses flowing a lot better. Along Monroe, I did see the perpendicular parking along Monroe and the narrowing of that street. Essentially, according to the plans that I've reviewed, it looks like Monroe is just an extension of the parking lot that's in front of Sprouts. So it looks like it's quite narrow, and that's not great for not only AC Transit buses, but for vehicles to go through. It's not considered a parking lot, so it would be more of a street where people actually have to get to UC Village and their primary residences, but it's also a place where AC Transit travels. So we tried to not travel behind perpendicular cars. It's quite a safety issue for us. There's also the layovers there along Monroe. It sounds like they will be accommodated, but again, they're further away from where the activity is going to be, so we're slightly concerned about that. And then finally, we just want to make sure that whatever the design is for Sprout, once you start getting into the architectural details, that it really activates the streets. We want to make sure that San Pablo, whatever's there on San Pablo, is just not a blank wall or an inaccessible barrier. We want to make sure that it is something quite lively and can make San Pablo a much more active street in that way. But thank you for having me.
I have a question.
Sure.
or a couple. So the perpendicular parking that you're describing, is there a preferred angle, or are you saying eliminate the parking altogether? So
No,
if
we're
they
not
were-
saying eliminate the parking. AC Transit's preference would actually be parallel parking, but we understand you can't get as many parking spaces out of that. But that is something that, one, our operators are more used to, and one is just, that's kind of what's more standard for a street. We would encourage looking at reverse angled parking. We know that that's something that's safer and takes up less area. But I think the way it's designed now, I don't know if there's enough space for those vehicles to actually back out from the perpendicular spaces and still have cars safely traverse through. It seemed tight to me. I think it's a 72-foot width there. So you're not going to get a very big roadway width there in addition to the perpendicular cars.
So if it was adjusted to angled parking, regardless of it being reverse or forward-loaded parking spaces, that would be more acceptable?
Yeah, as long as the widths are wide enough so that our operators and drivers can avoid any type of conflicts. And I should point out that on Pierce there is angled parking with buses there, so we have had experience with that with the city in the past. But reverse angle parking is something that we'd be really interested in pursuing.
Thank you. And then the second question I had was, sorry, let me go back to. Oh, the bus stop. So clearly it's better for the buses to pull aside and out of traffic, but this is going to be an ongoing condition down San Pablo where we are going to want continuous cycle track. So I think spending a little bit of time in solving it here will make it easier down the road.
Sure.
Is it possible for buses to stop in the lane and are there areas
Absolutely.
in other cities where that happens and the cars behind just have to be patient?
Yeah, it's actually AC Transit's preference as long as it's safely done. And usually those are situations where you do have 2 lanes of traffic, so AC Transit can stop in a lane and then cars can still get around. Where I think the issue is with the cycle track is probably more a couple things. One, it's that it's a unique situation, so we don't have that there anywhere in our system. I think along Buchanan, I believe the cycle track or whatever that path is there just stops short of the AC Transit bus stop that's existing at Buchanan and Jackson. So we don't have much experience with this. What we are concerned about is that you have a unique experience along San Pablo. So San Pablo is a very long corridor, it's 13 miles long. And then in this one section, we're going to have to tell our riders that you have to be careful about crossing a 2-lane bike path in order to get onto the bus. So if we're fine with stopping in the street, I think it's more of the interaction with the bikes at the bus stop that will have to be figured out. And there's ways. I mean, you can slow down the bike traffic, put up, signage, and there's lots of solutions to make sure that crossing is safe.
Thank you. No more speakers? So we'll close the public comment session, and I actually have nothing further to add to the.
Okay.
My questions have been answered.
Great.
How about you?
Well, as a subcommittee member, I'll just give a few comments. Well, actually, one question first. The study, which was a PUD, part of the PUD, it slipped my mind. Is that being? Tell us about the study. Who is doing that? The begin and end of the study, and give us more information about the parameters of what's being done for the study.
Right. The condition of approval in the PUD, you're correct, originally came about at a point in time when the project plans did not include the 2-way bicycle path. And the idea at that time was that if the project didn't include the two-way bicycle path, to have a study, technical study to get our arms around all the issues and possible solutions. Now that we have the 2-way bicycle path, we're approaching it a little bit differently. In particular, the challenge really is working with Caltrans. And so we're using Michael Moll and the engineering firm of Nelson Nygaard, who is preparing the complete street study, not so much to prepare a written report or anything like that, but to help facilitate the integration of this project design with our complete street study, and also to help facilitate a discussion with Caltrans. Michael has a good reputation with Caltrans. They respect his work nationwide on this kind of stuff. So again, I'm not expecting, we may end up with a memorandum of something, but the idea would be to use that as a tool to get to the, to help demonstrate to Caltrans that their issues will be addressed.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, a few comments. I do think that we should not rule out the street trees, and that trees with high crowns, whose branches don't start until much farther up, could be a possibility. And I do like the idea of a railing. I do see the current proposal for the bus stop siting still a bit problematic, but I don't see any other alternatives at this point either. I appreciate the comments of the AC Transit representative, and particularly the support of reverse angle parking, and the preference to stop in the lane, but as was pointed out, the reason for that not stopping in the lane was the bus shelter being across the path from the bus itself, and the people having to cross. And I think that's what they're trying to eliminate with this new siting of the bus stop. Finally, I would like to support the comments of those who spoke about making sure that developers held to their open space requirements. And I would like to state that the developers did not cede any of their own land to the cycle track. Instead, they've taken Caltrans right away. So I do support the comments of those who said that with all the space that developers have to work with, why couldn't they have moved back a few more feet to give us a little more breathing room? And that's it.
Okay, actually now I am going to add a couple comments. So to piggyback onto that, I think it feels natural to say we should borrow a foot or two of this development, and I could be agreeable to that, but I think as a solution along continuing San Pablo, that's not something that we can ask other developments and other properties to do. So I think we need to solve the problem starting from where the property line ends. We need to solve that regardless. And then we could still come back and ask this property if they would be willing to dip in a foot or so. But it seems like if that's the goal here, then that's not going to be the ultimate solution for the length of San Pablo. I think timing the signals to prevent congestion just makes a lot of sense. As an Albany resident, I would definitely be in support of that. I'm curious who maintains the trees. So once the trees are installed, will it be, it's an Albany street tree at that point, and so it'll be Albany that maintains it. I got this vision of these beautiful espalier trees that were very flat and horizontal, and we could connect their branches together and make like a living fence. So we'd have to talk to sorry, I'm getting tired. Tony Wolcott, see if he'd be willing to maintain some espalier trees. And then, I wanted to thank the architect of the other project for providing a site map with the trees. That's very helpful, and we'll continue the conversation on that the next time. So I feel like we can bring this to rest tonight. Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you still presenting tonight and giving us a chance to understand a little bit what you've been working on.
So we'll call Commissioner
We'll need to
Arkin back in,
bring-
and I will take just a
right.
very brief break.
Okay. We're going to take a minute break while we wait for the room to clear and bring back in Commissioner Arkin. If you use this, sure. Okay, moving on to item 6B.
Per child. In the latest submittal before you this evening, the applicant has indicated that the parking lot area will have rolling gates to allow for outdoor usage. And so before you is the site plan, which shows 10 parking spaces, and sliding gates are proposed for here and here. So when the hours of 3 to 5, these gates would roll across on both sides, and it would be serve as the outdoor space for children enrolled in programs at the center. The parking code requires 1 space per 6 students enrolled in a daycare facility. So with the 10 parking spaces, the center can enroll up to 60 students. The applicant has indicated in their revised submittal that they would like to have that option to enroll up to 60 students as part of their program. The employee parking is provided off-site through a parking agreement with the property owner of the Royal Cafe on San Pablo Avenue. So employees of the Learning Center actually park off-site and walk to the facility. Also, as part of the application, signage is included for the south and east elevations. This includes blue channel letters on the south and east sides of the building adjacent to the entrance and exits. Since the subject site is located in the R3 zoning district, the code requires that signage not exceed 8 square feet. However, the structure is not a residence but a commercial building which has historically housed commercial uses in recent years. As such, staff is recommending that the proposed signage be conditionally allowed as part of the use permit. Due to the frontage and proximity to San Pablo Avenue, staff recommends that the San Pablo commercial dimensional standards, which are 3 square feet per lineal front of building face, be applied to the subject site. Based on the revised plans before you this evening, this results in a maximum sign area of 300 square feet. The applicant has shown approximately 154 square feet of signage, which is well under the maximum signage amount. There's also a condition of approval specific to the signage being included and exclusively for the use and operation of the Learning Center at this location. The applicant is here this evening. We do have some speaker cards, so I can...
Commissioners, my name is Tim Sloat. I'm architectural designer at Lowney Architecture, and actually I'm sorry that we weren't able to present our revisions to the Sprouts and that shopping center, so hopefully in a couple weeks we'll be able to show that to you guys. But we actually met Lisa and Min at the June commission, and we decided that we were going to help hold their hand through this process. And so we're getting up to speed on their needs and having conversations about how to lay this out with. And so we were really asking for 6 times 11 students, so 66 is really what we'd like to get approved in terms of how many can be enrolled at the center. The other fine point we wanted to make sure that everyone understood was that 66 is a maximum for enrolled at a given time, is what we're understanding, not total number of students that would be using the facility, because they have an evening program, they have weekend programs. If it's 66 period, it gets so washed out that it's not a very effective thing. So I wanted to run over that part too. Again, the exit is here on the one-way street. We're keeping traffic off of Canes as much as possible, just that one stretch. The fence has to be at least 4 feet per the daycare rules. The height, again, could be determined by a conversation with the city and the neighbors. Then I want to bring Lisa up here to talk a little bit about their operations directly.
Quick question, did you provide a detail of the fence in your submittal?
We have not yet, and I know that's part of the COA, so we will do that.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm the Center Director for TG Learning Center. So just to clarify, when we're talking about the number of kids for the permit, that is the number of kids on site at any given time. That's different than the number of kids that are enrolled in our program that go through our program at any point during the week. The main reason for that is because we have kids that come in, for example, they come in, some kids come in at 2, some kids come at 3, and then they leave by 6. Some kids, like some of the older kids, for example, they don't come until 6, and so they might come from 6 to 8 or 6 to 9. And so the kids, they come at very staggered times, and so that's why I want to make sure that it's clear between enrolled versus on-site at any given time. So the 66 kids, that would be on-site, and with licensing, about the 75 square footage of outdoor space, their numbers are also on-site at any given time, not kids that are enrolled. So we do have a Taekwondo studio that will be on at a different location, and the owner of the Learning Center is also the owner of the studio. So almost all of our kids go to Taekwondo practice at least 3 to 5 times a week. So we have kids that are constantly coming in and out of the program, and we are very careful that with the flow of attendance determined by dismissal, by pickup, and by Taekwondo classes, all of that, that we are under the maximum number of kids at one time. And for the, I wanted to clarify for the number of staff also, 5 is our current staff number, but as we grow, the average will probably be about 1 staff for every 10 kids. So if we were to grow to, right now it's actually 1 for every about 7 or 8 kids, but we wouldn't have 5 staff if we had like 60 kids. We would have 6 staff, possibly 7 staff. So the number of staff would change as we grew. And I also wanted to address for licensing, the issue with the outdoor space is that right now the outdoor space is not big enough to have 60 or 66 kids allowed under licensing, but that's a discussion that we're going to have with licensing separately. Right now, if we didn't move the gate, the current with the gate along Canes, that would allow for a little over 50 kids under licensing, and for now, that is fine with us. We're not going to go over that number in probably a few years. But just with the city, we're asking to have, you know, the biggest number that we could according to, while following the code, so that in the future, if we were to expand, we wouldn't have to go through another round of amendments or revisions with the city, but we can just work directly with licensing.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Just some clarity around the signage and that back entrance and how you intend to use it?
Oh, right.
Yeah, I believe that we may redesign that to all be closer to the corner, same kind of area, whatever, within the areas that are allowed, but frankly, that is not, we're not actually sure why it's shown by the back door, and we really would like it all be closer to the street where it's more visible, not next to the neighbor.
Okay, I guess the question is, are you going to use that as an entrance, or is it
no,
more?
that's just an emergency exit door, or for generally the play space, I think we're proposing you come to the front door again to minimize noise for the neighbor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers in the community that would like to address the?
We have one speaker card, Robert Lieber.
My name is Robert Lieber. I am the neighbor next door. I would ask that that you indulge me with a little more than 3 minutes so that I can speak to you on these issues. I support the plan that was just presented to you. Our main concerns are that we get a setback. If somebody built this property today or it was redeveloped, which is a prime spot for redevelopment, I would be given an 8-foot setback right away. It wouldn't even be a question. The second thing for the safety of the building is when you exit that door, the way they have it now, if there was a problem, you would be exiting the building into possibly a fence-enclosed area with a emergency gate somewhere down here next to a masonry-built wall, which we don't know the seismic stability of. So I think it's very important that from the door straight out to the street is a clear exit that isn't blocked by a fence. So more than just wanting my setback, I think if you've got 60 kids in there and something like an earthquake happened, which could happen, or a fire, that there be no impediment to somebody going out that door and seeking refuge on the street. I think I need to say that I don't actually feel that that this is something that was approved when we changed the code in '06. And I sat through those meetings, and it was kind of, we lowered the heights back there and said that the only use for commercial could be a flat parking lot. And they didn't, it was clear that that was the only use. It wasn't that there were some other commercial uses that we could put there, like a play area for a daycare center. So that's a staff interpretation of the codes that we have now, and not actually what I think the intended uses were. My wife said that she wants something there, then nothing there. So I have to put that out there, because she told me to. I went to some Berkeley child care centers that have square footage that is not at 75 feet per student. In fact, a lot of them aren't, and they do work with licensing. A lot of times what they do is they say, well, you can't have so many children, you can only have so many children out in the play area at one time. The licensee, the applicant, is saying that they're going to work with the people that license it in the state. I think we have to look at the other issue that we want to have ironclad that we do in this is really two issues. And the other one is hours of operation. And it's not really hours of operation, it's hours the kids are allowed to play outside. And I think the 9 to 5 on a weekday is fine. I have no problem with that. I'd like to see a 10 to 5 if they're going to do weekend programs, and they did indicate that they're going to do weekend programs, and we're fine with that too. One of the reasons that we need to have a setback is that, we have animals. And actually, if we have kids on that fence, that dog's going to be barking at them all day and be crazy, and they're going to be crazy. And my neighbors across the street will not like me much because the dog's going to be loud. Right now, she's pretty quiet and only barks at the homeless people that sleep by our fence. I have to say that as you approach this, there is no parking there. I'm not saying don't do it because of that, but really they aren't meeting a parking requirement at all. If you're closing that area to parking between business hours, then you aren't meeting your parking requirement. If you're parking your employees off-site with 6 spaces that they're renting from another landlord, which is reducing the parking that is used for that landlord, for his business, which is a restaurant, and for other businesses in that area. I would say that the city has identified the Royal Cafe site also as another prime development site in the city. So if something happened there where they sold and they rebuilt, which it could, if economic times get better, it would make a lot of sense to have a mixed-use project there. It would be beneficial to a developer, it would be beneficial to the city to do that, and those parking places would disappear. So as you move forward with this and you approve this, or don't approve it, you are basically saying we are accepting the fact that this business is going to move in with no parking spaces. Parking spaces that they're going to use at Royal Cafe, are only as good as long as they last, and they do reduce parking that was used for another purpose. Again, I say, personally, I don't care so much about the parking requirements. That's your job. As a citizen, I care about the seismic safety of the building with all these kids. I care about having an exit that is completely safe, which means that they move to the street. And I care about the setback. So if they change their design, which they indicated they would, and they limit their hours in the use permit to the hours that I stated or whatever we work out, I would support this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers who haven't filled out a speaker card? We'll close it to the public and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Who would like to begin?
I have one more question that the applicant might need to answer. It's noted in the staff report that the play yard is anticipated to be used between the hours of 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. Is that are those the only hours? And is that a condition that we can put on the project?
So the reason for the limited hours is one for the neighbors to make sure that we won't have any noise after 5. So the 5 p.m. line, we can make that very solid. We won't have any kids out there after 5 p.m. To address the use of the outdoor space, we wanted to make sure that the kids aren't, that the gates are open when cars do need to come in and out. And so most of the kids, about 3/4 of the kids, get picked up by staff, which means that the staff get them from school, pick them up in vans, or some walk, like from Cornell, because it's really close. So either walking or driving, the staff would drop off the kids at the learning center, and then they would park somewhere else. And so the minority of parents that do drop off their kids, we want to keep the gates open during that time, so the kids would not be able to play outside during that time. And that goes, the latest dismissal time is 3:05, which is the late dismissal for Albany elementary schools. So, and then possibly 3:10. But that being said, if we if we were to open the gates, or sorry, close the gates and open the area for kids to play, it would be from, say, 3:30 to 5. So it's mainly, the heart behind it is to accommodate pickup drop-offs and to accommodate noise. And to address the comment about weekend programs, it's not, currently we don't really have weekend programs at all. It is an idea, possibly in the future, but it would be something like, SAT class. It wouldn't be kids running around outside, and we could definitely have the outdoor space free of kids on the weekends.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And maybe the architect could talk briefly to some ideas that you might have for the fencing and the gates.
Right. Well, short answer is that it is a pretty low budget project, and there's a preference to do some kind of mix of basic cyclone fencing and whatever kind of additional pieces can be done to make it more friendly, and whether it's landscape or slats or things like that. But if it needs to be something fancier, I think we'll deal with that. Maybe a basic metal picket fence or something like that. So ultimately it's up to you guys, but obviously we just ask you to be sensitive to this pretty low budget endeavor here. And we will provide, of course, the details as we move forward with the building permits and stuff.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I'm just pulling up the application here.
Okay, can we?
Are you agreeable to all the conditions, the lighting plan, the So part of the conditions also called for trellises and climbing vines, decorative planters, all of those warm and fuzzy details that will help make this a little bit more agreeable for children to play and parents to view. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that as well.
Well, one of the options was some pots with plants inside by the doors. I think it was to kind of make that door area nicer, and so I think that is going to be the first preference, something that ideally can be watered and maintained as part of the agreement, that it's nice. In terms of building trellises outside, again, it's kind of a budgetary question, but I think we would like to, as it's written here, it seems that we can do stuff by that doorway, the two doors really along that whole frontage, to spruce it up a little bit, and we would propose what we're going to plan and specify some plants and pots and include that in our submittal as well.
Okay.
So we would definitely observe it in that way at least.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
First, because the outside fence, I met the owners last time, and then he willing to help me to half the expense for me. So whatever city wants, we can follow the order, and then we can make it because owner decide to helping me to supporting. So outside issues can be, I think, okay. What you guys doing? Yeah, that is what I'm talking about. So I forgot to tell him to know I met the owner last time because I have hard time for the budgeting, waiting for the permit. So I went him the last time, and then he decided to willing help me to do it. So it will be okay. Just let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. I have
Thanks.
one more question. So the letters, are they applied or are they painted? What is the fabrication of the signage?
Actually, based on signage from the Teach Taekwondo Learning Center, the ALBANY PABLO, and then basically he asked me to what's going on to the post-it. So I made it. So it will be changed because I think I'm gonna apply the sign gauge from the sign company. So the company going to be get permit from you guys because I used to the way. So this is the idea. I just show them to what we're going to do. So I want to the Kingdom first grader, Kingdom fifth grader, and then I want to the high school kid. This is what I want to keep take care of the whole Albany kids, make safety. This is the only reason I just going to show up. It doesn't make to that way. I just explain.
Well, one thought is that that is a terrific wall for playing wall ball against. And if those are three-dimensional letters, they're going to get knocked off. So I think it would just be better to make it either painted on or just make it a great wall for the kids to play against.
Yes.
That might be one thought.
Okay,
Thank you. Would you be willing to come up to the microphone?
A really easy thing to do and a cheap thing to do would be to add our treatscapes to the public right-of-way out there on the edge, especially on the corners. So they could add those and they would be city trees. But everybody knows on the commission that when you put them on the corners, they're really beautiful. And I think it would be a really cheap thing to do. Either they would be free or a minimal cost like $100 a tree. They wouldn't impact your project at all because they wouldn't be on the property. They would actually be on the curbs. I got to say that the other business that was there before did not appreciate anybody using balls on that wall. And they really didn't like my kids using it. We stopped because it drove them crazy. So
your kids have tested this out? And
we have tested this out
affirming
thoroughly,
that this is a great wall.
It is a fabulous wall to play on.
You'll need a ladder to get all the balls off the roof when
yeah, but what I'm just trying to point out is when you let the kids do that, the people inside are going to hear it. And I know they'll hear it because the business that was there before didn't like it. And so I'm just offering that for information purposes, nothing else. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other, Nick, do you have any comments?
I don't have any comments, thank you.
Okay. So we can vote on this. The findings and conditions do call for trellis and decorative elements, and are you comfortable vetting that out when they come back with the building permit?
I think we should discuss that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome to modify that as you see appropriate before taking action.
All right, well, I have a few thoughts on this. As noted by staff, this type of learning use is acceptable in an R3 district with a use permit. And, we do allow daycare in all of the residential zoning districts, including outdoor play areas. So as I stated last time we saw this application, I think it is a compatible use. It's within walking distance of a number of our schools, and it's currently a vacant building. So I think I'm generally in favor of it. I'm happy to hear that the applicant is willing to locate that fence and gate such that there is direct access out of that emergency exit in the northeast corner, and it, by doing so, provides a buffer to the neighboring residential property. So that all sounds good. I would like to see both the fence and the specific signage detail in terms of what those letters are made of, and what the fence is made of, and other landscape details come back to us as a consent calendar item when it is submitted. And I understand that there's some urgency on time, but we do have 2 more meetings before the end of the year, and I don't think we can just give a blanket approval, nor should we be designing it, but we should see it. I think the fencing that was built around the Bright Star Montessori School would be one to look at. I realize you've got a limited amount of space here to work with in terms of including landscape in that, but at least at the diagonal parking, there will be opportunities in those triangles to introduce some type of greenery on the interior. And really do think of it as your front door and what you're giving to the sidewalk and the people who are walking, including your students and parents throughout the neighborhood. I thought the suggestion for street trees was excellent. I'd like to see that included as a condition of approval. And one of the other benefits that you'll pick up by having the fence located as you've proposed is one or possibly even two in tandem parking spaces for staff when that area is closed off. So you mentioned having staff in excess of the number that you have in off-site parking. Off-site parking is allowed under our code. So I think we need to clarify that the number of students, while it is not to exceed 66, will of course be limited by whatever the state licensing allows. So a not to exceed number is how I'd like to phrase that.
Okay, actually I had a few comments if you don't mind. I want to second Commissioner Arkin's comments, especially with regard to the street trees. I'm looking in Google Maps at this site and it's quite bare right now. No trees at all on those two sides on, adjacent to the parking lot and the building as well. And I just want to note, shoot, I just lost it. Looking for the conditions. In the conditions, sorry, 1 second. In the conditions, it does specify that indoor parking of staff and patron bicycles be provided, and I didn't see that called out in the plans. And can you tell me where that will be provided in the plans?
So if we could pull up the interior floor plans. We haven't solidified exactly where they will be, but there are a few ideas. One option is the storage rooms in the, northeast side. So by that emergency exit. So that is an option because there are existing rooms there and, they're pretty small and they're not going to be used for like kids. We're not going to have people there. So it could just be for storing bikes. Another option is, if you look at the reception room, connected to that reception room, there is a hallway, but there is an option of closing off that hallway and closing it in half and having the back half be used as a closet for the classroom and possibly the front half used as parking for bikes or storage for bikes and scooters.
Okay, great. And I'd like you to work with the city as well at some point about the installation of bike racks on the sidewalk. The city does have some money from time to time to install bike racks, and that would be good to have a few outdoor ones as well. Thank you. And I think that's it for my comments.
Thank you for asking about the bikes. That's something that I had been to ask and had forgotten, so I appreciate you bringing that up. One thought I had was, there's a possibility of cutting the asphalt right under the fence and planting vines so that the fence becomes a living, vines grow up the fence, and I think that could give you the greenery in combination with street trees. That could be very pleasing. I think this is a great use for this building. I hope it's successful. This is a business that Albany can really benefit from, and I agree that we should look at the trellises and exterior details in one pass, but in general, I'm in agreement with how this is developing. So does that mean that we vote on this? If it's approved, it'll come back as a consent item just to review the outdoor
Yeah, we can
Okay.
make it specific to those details.
Okay.
I just want to second that the idea of cutting concrete and maybe planting vines. As I look at Google Earth, this entire corner parking lot and is entirely impermeable. It's completely concrete and asphalt. There's no planting strips whatsoever. So to the extent you can introduce those, that would be most appreciated by the entire city.
Okay. I'll move approval of planning application 13-019, which is conditional use permit for an after-school program at 1109 Washington Street to serve up to 66 school-aged children at any one time, kindergarten through 12th grade, from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, and internal uses only on Saturday. The play yard will be fenced off as discussed and will be in use from the hours of 3 to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday only. The school will maintain 6 off-street parking spaces, off-site, off-street parking spaces. The conditions of approval include those outlined in the staff report, plus the following additional conditions: that the fence and sign details be submitted as a consent calendar item for Planning and Zoning Commission review, that the applicant provide the maximum number of street trees in the public right-of-way as possible, and that bicycle parking be featured in the sidewalk right-of-way per city standards.
I'll second that.
Question about Saturday. Do we want to make that Saturday and Sunday? The indoor playtime, I believe there wasn't a specification as to how the weekend might be used. I think we might just want to cover the entire weekend.
Well, I'm going to ask staff, did we notice it as just Monday through Friday?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
we did.
Okay.
So I think what we ought to do is approve it. I'd like to remove that part of my motion,
Okay.
since that's the way it was noticed to the public for this hearing. And if at a time in the future you want to add those programs, you can come back and we'll discuss it, and it'll be a good chance to discuss how things are going. Yes, you may. I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
That's
that's
yours
fine.
to say.
I wanted to make sure it was clear that these hours, the 1 to 9, Monday through Friday, those are during the school days. But as mentioned somewhere, for summer and for holidays, our hours will be a little different. But we can still set firm times when it comes to outdoor space. But for indoor operations, in the summer, we often do provide daycare because parents need to work. And so we often provide care from 9 to 6 for kids. We have summer camp and winter camp for when the kids are out of school. So the operations indoors, if I needed to be specific, would possibly be starting from 9.
9 to 6, is that what you said, or 9 to 9?
Well, it would start, in the summer, it could be 9 to 9. Yeah, but I'm just saying that in the mornings, those daycare hours are provided in the summer and during the holidays.
And would it still be 3 to 5 outdoor time?
We can keep the outdoor time the same. Mm-hmm. It would just be the indoor operations. We would be having programs going on inside starting at 9 a.m.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for that clarity.
Should we adjust the?
We're just thinking about the morning drop-off for a day care, full day care, morning drop-off for the parents might want to start at 8 o'clock or something like that. If they're rushing off to work, they're going to probably want to do it before 9 o'clock.
Okay, and similarly to our discussion of weekends, I don't see any discussion of expanded summer hours in our staff report. So it wasn't really noticed as such. Are we,
Well, I think we did include in the notice that summer programs are offered.
okay,
Yeah. And that was actually part of the, when the applicants applied, I think earlier in the year, they noted the summer programs that they offer.
okay. That being the case, I think we can amend the approval to include summer hours, including drop-off beginning at 8 a.m.
I'll second that amended motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Congratulations. Pending a 14-day appeal period.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to item 6C, 850 Hillside Avenue, a new two-story home study session. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes. Back before you this evening is preliminary design review plans for a new two-story construction at 850 Hillside Avenue. The project site is a 6,655 square foot vacant lot, which is located in the Hillside Overlay District. The applicant is proposing a new two-story single-family residence at this location. The home will include 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a 2-car garage, family room, and roof deck. The first floor will include an entry, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, reading room, and the garage. The first floor also includes an open floor plan to create common space and consolidate family living on 1 floor. Second floor includes 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, family room, and roof deck. The home overall is proposed to be 3,479 square feet. Previously, the Commission reviewed the design at the July 24th hearing earlier this year. At the time, the Commission offered pretty detailed feedback to the applicant to make revisions to the preliminary plans. In doing so, the applicant modified the plans, which are before you this evening. Changes include an overall reduction of 121 square feet. The main level and second floor have been reduced. 333 square foot reduction has been made for the main floor and a 132 square foot reduction for the second floor. The empty space at the ground level, which was previously shown as unused, will now include a workshop and a full bathroom. This creates another 308 square feet of usable space. The bathroom previously shown on the first floor plan has been eliminated. The west side setback between the building and Catherine's Walk has been increased. Previously, it was 5 feet. It's now 8 feet. The overall building height has been lowered from 19 feet 6 inches to 17 feet 6 inches. The front yard setback has also increased. Previously, it was 15 feet. It's now 20 feet 11 inches. And the rear yard setback has increased from 32 feet to 43 feet. Additionally, planting of native tree species on the west and south portions of the property have been proposed. And to eliminate floor area ratio issues, the applicant has proposed opening wall space on the lower level to the east, west, and south elevations. In the revised submittal, the applicant included a sightline survey. By reducing the building setbacks, the applicant has preserved existing views for neighbors on either side of the project site. And so on the screen is the survey that has been provided. So this is the subject site with a footprint of the proposed building. This is the neighbor to the east and obviously the neighbor to the west, and it shows the sight lines so that either neighbor will be able to maintain their respective west and east facing views. The proposed project is modern style architecture. Modern homes typically have garage integrated into the house design as the applicant has proposed. The style of the home makes use of large windows and low-pitched roofs. Proposed building materials include modified fiber cement, reclaimed redwood, glass, and anodized aluminum. And in this submittal, you have more detailed elevations showing you, giving you a better perspective of how the house would appear from the street and at other vantage points. The applicant is here this evening and has a presentation. I also have a couple speaker cards for this application.
Great, thank you. And just a reminder, if you're interested in speaking to this item, go ahead and fill out a card in the back and bring it on up. Are there any questions for staff? Would the applicant like to come forward and present their project?
Should I go ahead and use this? Yeah.
Good evening. First, thank you to the Commission for all your comments last session, and thank you to Ann Hirsch and Jeff Bond for all your work in this study session process. Director Bond suggested I give some of my background. So I'd first like to extend this book to the Commission as an example of the execution this project will have and some of the work that I've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My architectural training began in 1992 when I did my first house plans and Title 24 energy calculations. I've been a builder for over 20 years and worked on entitlement and construction of residences in Albany, Berkeley, Oakland, San Francisco, Marin County, Napa, Sonoma County, Sebastopol, Santa Rosa, and on up into Northern California. I've worked as a professional engineer, and I have designed, engineered, and built 8 single-family units and produced structural calculation sets for over 30 homes and additions. I'm trained in passive house design and in mechanical systems design, and I'm a certified BPI building analyst and building envelope professional. I've overseen over $20 million of construction in the Bay Area, and I'm first credited as builder of the 3 flagged projects in the book Houses and Origins by WA Design. My great-grandfather was an architect of historic Berkeley homes, and my grandfather worked for One Nail McGregor in Berkeley and Albany before building custom homes in Lafayette and Walnut Creek. I spent the first 10 years of my career building in Sonoma County area before transitioning to the East Bay in 2003. My wife, Nicole, who's here tonight, and our 2 girls and I hope to move into 850 Hillside as soon as we can. Our design has benefited greatly by the assistance of 2 architects, Nate Bisbee of TLCD Architecture, Santa Rosa, and Craig Hollow of Sagan Pachoda Architecture of San Francisco, as well as structural engineer Ken Hughes. At our last meeting, we received a wealth of feedback and have since met with Ann and Jeff, who helped apply the Commission's comments in our revised design. We also received feedback from neighbors. Ann Hirsch has been of great assistance in meeting with neighbors, with whom we've met on-site to discuss the impacts of our design. And thank you to those of you who took the time to do so. This drawing shows the height of the design in relation to adjacent homes. At 17 and a half feet high, our proposal is 3 or 4 feet above the home to the left and lower than the next visible home to the right. Our lot is less steep than the surrounding lots. Due to this topography, the house is massed higher and will show itself at street level a bit more than would be the case on surrounding steeper lots. We have mitigated this mass by a downslope driveway, a flat roof, and reducing our ceiling heights. We are now at 10 and a half feet below the 28-foot height allowance. This landscape plan shows a landscaped front yard, entry steps, and front porch open to the street and Catherine's Walk. We've moved back and opened up the front porch area. The addition of a living roof over the garage breaks up the massing of the facade and creates visual interest. We've moved the house an additional 3 feet away from Catherine's Walk to allow for a wider planting area next to Catherine's Walk. This creates a green belt, which we envision as a natural woodland feel. We've added an entrance path. We've added an entrance path from the walk. This landscape plan results in upwards of 70% of the lot square footage planted, with 30% of the lot woodland environment. We're working with landscape designer Nina Mullen to fully develop the plan for the green belt, a living roof, a terraced backyard of lawn, fruit trees, and vegetable garden for practicing permaculture. In addition to our net zero energy goals, we will pursue reduced water usage through rainwater collection and support the development of a gray water irrigation system. We've reduced the size of the house to 10% less than the square footage allowed by the FAR. The footprint of the house has been reduced from 33% lot coverage to 28% lot coverage by reducing the setbacks at 3 sides. Surrounding view angles have been improved by moving the entry back 5 feet, moving the side setback to Catherine's Walk 3 feet, and by removing the rear setback 11 feet. These increased setbacks and a stacked structure help preserve sightlines. The varied architecture of the area takes a modern turn at 856 and 841 Hillside Avenue, a theme which continues to Albany Park at the end of the street. The house typology of this portion of Hillside Avenue is varied with a strong taste of boxy, functional modernism. The pedestrians' relationship to Hillside Avenue and Catherine's Walks to enjoy the views, both of the bay and some modern architecture, as they hike around and perhaps enter Albany Park. We would like our design to contribute to this experience. This shows the proposed ground floor at the rear of the building, which is dug into the hillside. It provides direct access to the lawn area, which is here. Its usage is to support both gardening and gatherings in a multi-use indoor-outdoor space. This open area provides a nice, sunny but covered lawn area where the rear entrance of the building is located. Here. There's a utility bathroom for washing off the dog and the kids. The building further south. For 856 Hillside, this would mean impacting their San Francisco view from their sunroom, which is the main view windows of the house. And for 846, impacting the view of the East Bay Hills from their dining room, living room, and second-story bedroom. A revised design has set the structure back an additional 11 feet and preserved views for each. And due to the fact that 846 Hillside, which is right here, is not visible at street level and set far down the hill, the sidewalk views are relatively continuous from 856 to 840, with views ranging from San Francisco to the Campanile. And by increasing our setbacks on 3 sides, we've maintained this 210-degree view over that 100 feet of sidewalk. The materials palette is off-white panels. This. Redwood. This is actually salvaged redwood from a mill up in Crescent City. And glass. This is dual pane Solar Band 70 XL with Sungate 600 on the inside, so it's high performance heat gain reducing glass. And some bronze colored aluminum, or bronzed aluminum. At the fascia, the transom above the door, and the brise-soleil around back. The garage doors will be glass with either exposed wood or aluminum frames. The living roof above the garage sits just above eye level and will be an excellent opportunity for landscape design. Visible here is a glass awning over the entry, and the redwood rain screen board widths are meant to vary between 3 and 5 and 7